Folks, it has been a while since I had interviewed anybody on this channel, and the W.A.D.E concept conversations started a long time ago, and one of the central names that I wanted to start back with the ring presenting the W.A.D.E concept was someone that made the W.A.D.E concept conversations big in the first place. It's my old friend, my brother from another mother, Brian, a.k.a. True Geordie, is back on the channel. What's up, my man?
Mate, we talk a lot. We go way back. We've had me and W.A.D.E have sipped some whiskey and had a long chat many times.
Many times.
So this good to do it on camera, and it's good to talk boxing. Well done, mate, for a start. The Ring magazine presents W.A.D.E concept. I'm so proud, so happy for you. The Ring are amazing. The fights that they're going to be doing are amazing, and they've picked the perfect guy. Well done, mate.
Thank you, brother. Yes, the biggest reason, one, because you are my brother. I wanted to bring you in and chat with you. But two, yes, the Ring magazine is putting on some major boxing events. And it's not just the Ring. Boxing right now is hot, white hot. Every big fight you want is happening, it feels like, in the next couple of months. And those fights are going to lead to even bigger fights a couple of months after that. So I want to get into all those things with you. I want to talk all these crazy matchups. But before I do, I want to talk about, this stud that I don't know if you've seen across the crossover boxing scene. This guy, tall, little lanky, little pale, but they're saying he might be the next great white hope in boxing. W.A.D.E Plem. I don't know if you've seen this guy. He's pretty.
I've seen him, man. He's the real deal. Yes.
What'd you think? What'd you think of my fight, man? Anyway. Training was great. It was, it was miserable. If you want me to be honest, it was the rough I did not understand at 32 years old that my body was not going to be able to hold up like it would have at 23. And then once I found out, I had already committed to doing it. So I was like, all right, let's just stick it out and see what happens. But yeah.
I don't think people understand that aging thing, because a lot of the crossover boxing fans, they're young, right? And it's like, that's why I haven't bothered doing it, because I'm like, if you made it 1 minute rounds, maybe I'd be interested. But you know what I mean? It's fucking hard, right? And
it's tough, dude.
And you did amazingly well. We were like, I was literally in the house. We were all celebrating every punch. It was like,
how nervous were you? Were you like mad nervous?
I was way more nervous than you were.
Everybody.
Yeah, the best thing about it was your ring walk made me go, I feel like he's got this under control. He's not emotional. You remember when, I always think back to this for influencer boxing, when Gib came out before he fought Jake Paul, and he was just a raving fucking lunatic, and he was all the energy. I was like, there's nowhere near enough energy left in the tank for this. Whereas you kept it together. Yeah. And mate, it was an amazing performance, considering it was your first, proper boxing match, even though you'd done a bit beforehand. It showed the levels that you could go to if you keep doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's crazy. I watched the video back and I'm like, who is that? Because now I'm removed from it a little bit and I've gotten back to doing content. Obviously, we're with the Ring and we're going to be doing some fun stuff. But I look back and I'm like, man, I was in such a different headspace. I remember I watched the video. I didn't remember. I get in the ring, and shout out to Mosiah. Love the guy, by the way. I want to train with him. So the next time I come to the UK, I want to train with him again. He is such a good dude. We've talked a couple times now. But I got in the ring, and I didn't remember doing this. Walked straight up on him and was like,
what's up? I was like, what's up, bro?
Who is that guy, man?
Mate, you know what's funny? Fighting, really, in many ways, it turns people into the worst version of themselves.
It really can, yeah, man.
And that's why I have real respect for people like Anthony Joshua, who are still so nice, despite having to be in this state of mind where everyone's out to get you. And my boy Joey on Misfit, shout out Joey Knight. I've watched him flick in and out of boxing, and the version when he's in boxing, he's so much more emotional. He's so much more vicious. Everything, competitiveness is oozing out of him. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to Joy winning a belt, but I'm also excited to see after fighting when he could just chill.
100%. That's why I'm like, I'm loving this break I have. I don't know if I'll continue doing it. We'll see. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can talk about the future of that in a bit, I guess.
Yeah, potential fights out there. But while I am on my hiatus, there's big fights happening, man. I wanted to get you on to get your thoughts on really all the big ones. But the first one, this April 26th card, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Eubank Jr., Conor Benn. I'm from the United States, and I have an outsider's perspective on the lineage of this beef. And even, I look through my comment section and they're like, Wade, you're going to enjoy this so much because we've been waiting our entire lives after the father's rivalry to see the sons. Why? Because there's no belt on the line. This isn't in a weight class where either guy is really going to be comfortable. Why is this fight such a big deal?
If people are unsure, right, there's a documentary on Amazon Prime called Four Kings, and it talks about the history of Lennox Lewis, Frank Bruno, who were the heavyweights of that era, the competitive British heavyweights, and Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr. And you really get a peek behind the curtain in not just, how amazing that they all were at fighting, but the drive, and how almost self-destructive they all were. Aside from Lennox, who really kept it together, all of them went through hell, mentally, physically. Bloody hell! It's a watch where you're like, wow. And in that documentary, you see Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr. They really hurt other fighters to a point where they were never the same again.
Yeah.
That was when people got an eye open. There was talks of banning boxing back then because the level of damage that these guys were doing to other fighters was so significant, so severe. It was life-changing.
Yeah.
And then you even get to see the rehabilitation of these guys and how they've managed to rebuild their lives as best as they can. God bless them. But this, was like kill or be killed. And we say that a lot in boxing.
Yeah, it's thrown around a lot. But this,
Yeah, they were living the consequences out in their fights.
Gerald McClellan is currently living those consequences after
forever.
Forever.
Never the same.
And by the way, Gerald McClellan, one of the nastiest punchers that's ever lived. When I was in camp for my fight, and granted, it's a little crossover fight, BJ Flores showed me so many clips of Gerald McClellan and was like, look at this guy as a puncher at middleweight. Like, he was the nastiest puncher I've ever seen. And even him, it happened to him. That's how dangerous the sport is.
Yeah, and when you look at rivalries in all of fighting, you want personalities that clash. And no personalities clashed in the history of fighting better than Eubank Sr. versus Nigel Benn. Nigel Benn had that street attitude, just mean, like just wanted to hurt people. And then, Eubank Sr., while he was an amazing fighter, and he was actually like a lot tougher than people give him credit for. He took a lot of damage, a lot of punishment, but he did it with grace. He did it with this elegance and this British gentleman accent that he literally invented, right? He didn't grow up with
I was going to say, just almost born as he became a fighter, which I love.
It was unbelievable. So these two guys had an amazing battle where the first fight went Eubank Sr.'s way. The second fight should have gone to Nigel Benn probably. And it made them legends, and it's been on and on and on for years and years. We've always heard about them in the British press, in the British media. They've just been cemented as something different to all these other boxers, along with the handful of others. And now their sons have come along at a similar time. They are the carbon copy of their fathers in so many ways, but maybe you could argue not quite as elite in terms of boxing technical ability and all of that, but personality. And this fight, the reason why it is catching fire is because we can all feel what's on the line here. A lot of us have never, ever fought for a world title and never will, and we'll never have that. That's not what this is about, man. This is pride, family, all of that is, my dad's name is on the line here.
Yeah.
We've all felt like when we were kids, when we had to go and fight some kid, his dad knew my dad or whatever, like playground rules type shit this is.
Right.
But with dire consequences because they are severely, explosive punchers and whatnot. And the more that they nitpick and the layers come about with the failed drugs test and the smashed egg on their head, and it's just getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And it was all about the dads at first, and it wasn't really that personal. Now it is personal. And outside of, heavyweight title fights, this has been one of my favorite build-ups, if not one in British boxing history, because all the interviews, they're just... Eubank Jr. is bringing it. I've got to give him credit. He is becoming a star. At the end of his career, out of nowhere, he's becoming a star, mate.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch because, like you said, this started out as, look, it's the sons of two British legends. And while maybe they don't have the same talent level, and while, like you said, there's not championship lineage, at least for both guys right now, Conor Benn on the way up. We'll see, obviously, after the drugs test, some people kind of south on him. But a lot of people for Eubank Jr. thinking, maybe that time's passed and we expected a little more, but maybe we're not going to get that. But now this fight has resurrected just a feeling of what I really, really enjoy about MMA and not necessarily prevalent in boxing, that you don't need a belt for a fight to be interesting. You don't need some massive legacy for a fight. Sometimes you just like a good fight and a little bit of personal stakes. And for this one, like you said, it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, when we get to the fight itself, I'll ask you kind of what your thoughts are. But you talked about the legendary dads, and I think it has to be brought up when we talk about this. Conor Benn, very close with Nigel Benn. I mean, it's inseparable at the hip, and you can see a lot of love and respect. I mean, it looked like when Conor got hit with that egg that Nigel Benn was ready to turn the clock back 30 years. He was ready to go. I'm talking choke slam, freaking ready. And then Conor, even when Chris Eubank brought up, and it was so funny, Eubank Jr. was like, if you touch me again, you won't get that hand back. And he was Conor was ready to snap on him. Like that kind of relationship you don't see across the aisle. And again, I'm an outsider a little bit, so I wanted to get your perspective. What do people, when they look at the kind of fraying of the relationship between senior and junior, what do they think of that?
Well, I can only give what I think, and I've interviewed Eubank Sr. and I've met Eubank Jr. before. Some people from the outside looking at me go, they're too similar. They clash because they're too similar, as often father and son do. My belief is that your relationship with your child is the parent's responsibility. And I think that it's a difficulty in letting go for Eubank Sr. He brought him into this, he taught him everything he knew, and he was constantly by his side, the same way Nigel Benn is with Conor Benn now, and even on the walkouts and everything. And it got to a point where it was like his dad was almost two in the front of it, you know what I mean? And his son was behind him. And even, if anyone wants to watch back that Billy Joe Saunders fight where Chris Eubank Sr. is allegedly coaching his son through it, where his dad is just posing in the middle of the ring.
It was an odd thing to watch, man. He got the cane and he's got the monocle and he's doing the thing. And then on the other side of it, you got Eubank Jr. essentially like, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna win this fight the way I want to win it by not.
Whereas Billy Joe Saunders is getting actually coached.
Yeah, like he's winning the first 6 rounds of the fight.
Maybe give him some fucking tips, mate. You know what I mean? He's struggling.
He's like doing it like a pivot and like.
Mate, he lost like the first 5-6 rounds or something just because he was half asleep in there and his dad was doing the pose. And if he'd have been on it, he might have won that fight. And that's where his dad has not always been great for him, despite giving him, the bigger paydays because of his last name. And I do think part of the problem is Eubank Jr. in that he doesn't really want to listen to anyone because he's been raised around greatness. He's always allegedly been hard to train. He's tried to coach himself and all of this nonsense. And you see him hop from coach to coach. He had Terence Bud Crawford's coach for one fight. Don't need him. I'll go to it was his best performance in years. Yeah. So,
been with Roy Jones as well.
Yeah, that didn't end well, right? So my thing is, I think Chris Eubank Sr. just wants to tell Junior what to do, and this is Junior's breakaway moment of I'm going to do what I want. And Senior does not want him to fight this fight. I was
going to say, what do you make of that? He's saying essentially Conor Benn's going to knock him out.
Well, he's sort of alluded to that, and I think that that's got to be playing slightly in the psyche of Eubank Jr. because when he was interviewed on Piers Morgan, when Piers Morgan tried to ask him questions like that, he did not want to go there.
Stonewalled him.
Whereas, as much as he dominated the banter side and the insult, Conor Benn was a lot more open, a lot more true to himself, and I gave him credit for that at the time on my video, whereas Eubank Jr. was still posturing in mind games. I don't think Conor's even doing any mind games, to be honest with you. So I do think that this is bothersome to him, and I think the real sad thing is it's going to take a cash payment from what people are alluding to get Eubank Sr. involved in this, and it's like, you know what, mate? It's your son. I know, like, money is important, but, like, you're basically taking food off the table from your son here to get yourself paid. Do you think Nigel Benn's getting fucking paid? Maybe because he's in a coaching role somewhat, but he's not saying either pay me or I'm not turning up. I think it's a bad look, and I think Eubank Sr. is a selfish person, and I think that's a problem in the mind, because there's a lot more pressure, in my opinion, on Eubank Jr. because his dad's up on the scorecard, and he's the bigger man, he's the more experienced, he's fought at the higher level, he's the favourite. Whereas I think Conor Benn, the consequences of him losing this fight, or his dad gives him a big hug and goes, "It's all right, son, don't worry about it," that will make him fight with less fear than what Eubank Jr. fights with. And as much as the skill set may be, people might say, but it doesn't matter because Eubank Jr. is a better fighter. I think frame of mind is important in this. I think it's a lot about what we feel this fight. So, yeah.
I mean, let's talk about it. So the fight's at 160. Obviously, the first fight, I think, was supposed to be at 156, which is a pretty big. I mean, we're not going to look at him doing this more than right now. We don't even know for Chris Eubank Jr. how many times he'll fight, period, after this. Like, this looks like...
I mean, if he loses, I think that could be it.
Yeah. So when you look at the fight itself, you're talking about Conor Benn fighting with, a lot less fear, a lot less apprehension. You're talking about a lot of pressure on Eubank Jr., and then you do bring in that, well, okay, he's just better, so it doesn't really matter. How do you see the fight going?
Without giving a final prediction, I think the common theory is Eubank Sr. fought at a much higher level because he's older and he's had those opportunities. Problem with that is he lost at that higher level, but he has fought at a higher level. He's the bigger guy, but he is going to be weight trained, and that we've seen that didn't do great for him when he got clocked on the chin against Liam Smith.
Yep.
And yes, he has the better reach, etc. I think you can make Eubank Jr. the favorite. I don't have a problem with that. But I think some people seem to be writing off Conor Benn's chances, and I understand why, that he hasn't fought at anywhere near the same level. But when I just watched them on the eye in the ring, there was one thing I looked at their last fights, is in the 6th round, I thought, I'll fast forward it. Let me have a look at the middle of the fight. And I think the speed difference was quite noticeable. And I think Conor Benn's speed it could be a problem. It could be a real problem here. And another thing is, if you look at Eubank Jr., he has cherry-picked a lot of his career, right? He's taken some hard fights, but he's taken some easy fights. And, how long has it been since he was in a proper fucking knockdown, drag-him-out war where someone is piling the pressure on him? If you look at the Sharameta fight, he did get caught a little bit, but the Sharameta pace of the fight, it was comfortable.
Yeah.
Conor Benn ain't going to give you that. He's not going to give you the
stay in
space,
first, second gear,
time. No. Yeah, he is going to be on you.
Yeah.
And as much as I accept that Eubank is going to anticipate that, I worry about the speed come that 5th and 6th round, because he's we talked at the start of this about age. Mm-hmm. He's getting older. Conor Benn is in his fucking prime. So if he really drives that pace and he can tire out Eubank Jr. a little bit, and he is needing that breather, and Conor Benn stays on him, the speed of the hands of Conor Benn, they could flatline him. It could knock him out. So I don't think people should just automatically go bigger guy. I mean, when they say a bigger guy wins, they're talking about the power. Yeah. Chris Eubank Jr. does not have great power, so I don't think it's as open and shut as what some people think it is.
No, I honestly, I hate saying... I don't really hate it, but it gets overused 50-50 fight. But for this one, the strengths that both guys have make for a matchup that can go either way, for real in this fight.
In their last fights, both guys didn't have 10 out of 10 spectacular performances. A lot of people thought Eubank looked a little older against Sharameta. A lot of people thought that Conor Benn was, against Dodson. Dodson covered up well early, and he took him into those deeper waters, and he was catching him a bit. Yeah. And if a bigger man is catching you like that, how do you take it? So, yeah, I think they both didn't look... There was holes in both of their game in the last fight.
Yeah, I mean, I just think for the fight itself, I think we're going to, it's hard to live up to the hype when you have all this attention, all this excitement. I honestly think it will. But sold out, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Speaking of Tottenham Hotspur, one other fighter on the card. I mean, by the way, the card is stacked. You have Chris Billum-Smith. You have Anthony Yard on the card, Lyndon Arthur on the card, Liam Smith on the card, Aaron McKenna. Like, this is a proper, and I say proper because it's a proper UK banger. Like, I'm looking down the line. This is every fighter you guys want to see in your backyard coming out and having a great card here. But one of our guys that's going to be on the card, Tottenham fan, Vidal Riley, fighting Chev Clark on this thing. Let's talk about that, man.
Obviously, in the UK, the football element, we're brought up with it, right? And Vidal was no different, even being a boxing fan. And we've seen him, in that gym, West Ham gym in London, just grinding away with Derek, his dad, who's just coaching him from being a little kid.
You've seen firsthand how that coaching goes.
Mate, it's not nice. Let me tell you. Derek is a bad man. For those who don't know Vidal's dad, just imagine Derek Chisora training you from being 2. It's pretty much like that. So, Vidal has had it, hard. And he has come through... winning medal after medal in, the schoolboy years and whatnot. And now he's here at the big leagues. But he had this dip of the toe into the influencer boxing world. He was coaching KSI. People immediately underestimated him from that. And he's shown since then, he is one of, if not, the most skillful cruiserweights in the world. And defensively especially. But you're seeing more and more the eye of the tiger coming out, that nastiness, that aggressiveness, because his dad wants them to get those knockouts and be on the forefront and the front foot. And I think with Chev Clark, we're going to get a performance from him where I hope it's his time to shine now on the biggest stage and prove that, all the doubters, this influencer boxing bullshit, I'm the real fucking deal. And look, no disrespect to Chev Clark. It's against a very worthy opponent. It's against a game opponent.
Absolutely.
It's someone who he's got to take seriously. It's not someone who they've just set up to lose. This is a credible win.
Yeah, British title on the line. And you talked about Vidal's skill. What did Daniel Dubois say? He was the best 8-year-old boxer he'd ever seen.
That says it all. Right?
It really does.
Vidal Riley, let's not kid ourselves, in the amateurs, beat Daniel Dubois multiple times, right? He's the best kept secret in boxing. And this is the thing where I'm like, I've been frustrated in how he's been marketed, if I'm being honest, because the guy's got 1 million subscribers on YouTube. How many boxers have got that? What, 10, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe?
Yeah.
And he's got the skills. He can talk in front of the camera. He's got it all. Now we just need to give him those opportunities and he'll shine. I
was going to say, this does feel like the breakout fight for either guy, by the way. Obviously, we know Vidal personally, and so it's going to be hard not to have a little bias there, but this is a breakout fight, British title, but more so the undercard of this magnitude, right? The amount of eyes that are going to be on this. You said it. This is probably one of the best built cards in British boxing history, at least in recent history. The eyeballs is what you look for in a fight like this. And if Vidal can show out all the things that we've been saying, more people, not just in the UK, but I know that the Americans are watching this one. This is going to be hopefully that moment for either guy to start to really build. Because again, you're talking about a cruiserweight champ or a former cruiserweight champ under their fight. And Chris Billum-Smith.
I think Vidal beats Chris Billum-Smith tomorrow.
As soon as he won those belts, I looked across, and granted, just lost to Zordo, but I looked across and went, Vidal's not far away.
I think Vidal beats him. I think Vidal is way more skilled, way quicker than him. One of my most impressive performances of Vidal was one that a lot of people didn't give him the credit for, was when he got that injury and early in the fight. He broke his rib, I think it was, something like that.
The wall fight.
Yeah, he made it look easy.
Didn't even know it. I was like, oh yeah, man, Vidal's not, he's not, necessarily being himself, but you couldn't see why.
Because he's a skillful fighter, people automatically think skillful, not a tough guy. But again, I've been in that room and I've seen how hard his dad trains him. This man is bulletproof, and it would take you'd have to nail him to the ground to stop him, right? So the only fear for Vidal is to get comfortable in there in terms of his skill set, in terms of being so defensively good that you can sort of go into cruise control. And with his dad behind him, I don't think that's going to happen, but he needs to be aggressive enough to make sure that he is the one showing that he is the better fight at all times. Yeah,
you can't get comfortable with another, high level amateur in Chev Clark and now 10-1 as a pro. But speaking of bulletproof, the man that's main eventing on May 2nd for the Ring's Fatal Fury Times Square card seemed to be bulletproof right now in his career. That is one Ryan Garcia. This card is only a 3-fight card. I don't think I've seen anything like this in boxing, and this is why you do have to give a lot of credit to what Turki Al-Sheikh and the Ring are doing. They're having such interesting, different events that you would just never see. They're talking about the Alcatraz event, staging a boxing match in Alcatraz. You don't even think of these things.
it reminds me so much of when the UFC started rocketing. I was early to the UFC compared to most people. Like literally, I must have been over 20 years. I've been watching the UFC now. So the setting, the cage, the feeling around it, gladiatorial, you know, it captured the imagination, and we had characters in there, you know.
Absolutely.
Unlike now, which, you know, the UFC is crying out for characters at the moment. We now boxing has those characters, and what Turkey is doing very cleverly, all right, it's not a cage, but he's painting a canvas for them to showcase their skills on, that forces people to go, did you, even if you're not a boxing fan, you'll be like, did you see that in the middle of bloody Times Square? Like, and people will go, oh, Ryan Garcia. Oh, that's Ryan Garcia. Oh, I better give him a follow on Instagram. And this is how, it obviously costs money, but this is how you generate interest in different, clever, unique ways. And I think a lot of people, you know, us boxing fans are just wanting to see the fight, right?
Right.
But I think people might be sleeping on what this is going to do for boxing.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes you don't, and I say sometimes, we've never seen anything like this, but I don't think we're going to realize the magnitude of how this is going to visually look until we actually see it. I don't even know how you stage a boxing match in the middle of Times Square. I don't know how you do it.
Amazing.
I can't even imagine like all the billboards and the lights, and it's going to look like an actual movie. We say that a lot, but this will. 3-fight card headlined by Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero at 147. You have Devin Haney on that undercard taking on Jose Ramirez. And then you have Teofimo Lopez, and I think this is the fight of the night to me. Teofimo Lopez and Arnold Barboza Jr. for the WBO World Super Lightweight title. 3 fights, and I think we all know the purpose of all 3 fights, at least in the idea of the matchmaking. Turkey hasn't been shy about saying, listen, we want Ryan to win, we want Devin to win, and we want them to fight each other. And Teofimo, obviously they want to do more work with him and potentially even have a Ryan fight there, or have Teofimo go and move up to maybe, I don't know if Teofimo should be moving up to 147, but be at 140 and you know, Turkey look for a matchup there for him. But what do you think about this entire card?
I agree with you that the Barboza Teofimo Lopez fight is the one that it's going to be the highly competitive one out of the 3, because Barboza against Jack Catterall, he was outboxing him. And Jack Catterall doesn't really get outboxed. Like, you know, a lot of people had him as the undisputed when he was robbed in that fight against the Scottish lad. And so I think we know the level of Barboza. And with Teofimo, there is some question marks there, right? You know, you lost to the Aussie guy, the Australian lad. What's his name, man? Fucking hell. Do you remember?
Teofimo loses to Kambosos.
That's it, yeah. And Kambosos really has looked okay since then, but like, he lost to Devin Haney, right? He's come up against the elite level, and it's really put question marks on what is Teofimo, because he talks the talk, but he hasn't really walked the walk yet. And I think that this Barboza is a really good, you know, temperature check on this guy of like, how good are you really before we start? Because I kind of don't like it when people talk that much shit when they haven't done a lot and they've been showing up in their actual tests. You know what I mean? Like, it's like he's delusional. And we need to see where he really is. Devin Haney, I am most interested to know what his state of mind is coming into this fight, because when you've been, you know, dropped as easily and as you know, several times in that fight, sometimes people just don't come back with the same confidence, the same punch resistance. And the one thing I do rate about Haney is he's a pro. Like, he takes everything seriously, he trains hard, but his tactics were completely wrong in that fight against Ryan Garcia, and I think a lot of that was down to his dad. And, you know, ironically, we talked earlier about Eubank needing to get, you know, in his dad into the back of it. I think that Haney,
a lot of boxers have that problem. A lot of them.
Because
Teofimo got that. Teofimo Senior's always going crazy.
But we spoke about Vidal earlier, right? And Vidal's dad is as hands-on as it gets. And yet you never hardly hear from him, right? He's working in the shadows with his son. He wants his son to be the star. That's how it's supposed to be. And Bill Haney, if anyone's made people hate Devin Haney more, it's Bill. Because Bill doesn't shut the fuck up. So, I hope Devin does come through that, because there's a lot of excuse-making for his performance against Ryan Haney. And I've seen, you know, countless experts now say that Ryan Garcia, there was no benefit from what he was on. It really wouldn't have made that much of a difference. It was such a small amount, yada, yada, yada. If anything, it might have hindered him, is what the experts have said. And it's just constantly like, you're a drug street, and I get why they're going there, no problem.
Yeah.
But let's get them drug tested. Let's make sure that they're both clean, and let's find out again if it was a fluke or it wasn't a fluke. Because I think that if you look back at their amateur, days, yes, it was competitive. It was 3-3, but Ryan Garcia was hitting him hard many times with that left hook, but there was headgear on, and there was no headgear in that fight. And now Ryan Garcia is a grown ass man. And as much as he says some fucked up shit that me and you both don't love,
yeah.
He's a talent, right? I seen, who was it? Paulie Malignaggi talking on, that channel that they've got, saying, I won't say anything because of the ring, that channel that they've got, saying, it's because of the peds. That's why Ryan Garcia is so quick, and that's why he's got the speed. And I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, Ryan Garcia may be on PEDs in the past. I don't know. But that speed, that is God-given. He has had that from being a child, man. Yep. And I think that, I'd like to see Ryan push on more. And he is someone who, any fight Ryan's in is a big fight. And that's unique in boxing. He's got that star quality. And to see him at Times Square is going to be wild.
You talk about boxing needing characters. We have at least 2, potentially 3 because of Rolly Romero on this card. But you have that on this card. We talk about Teofimo Lopez. I think Ryan Garcia is the most talented, naturally skilled, you can't teach what he does guy in boxing right now. Teofimo Lopez might be, as far as matchups are considered, a guy that gives everybody around his weight class problems. Like Teofimo in the Lomachenko fight jumped off the page. That guy was like, who is that? Right? And you watch him even in the Josh Taylor fight. He looks like he's on just a different level.
That was a great performance, but the Josh Taylor, it's like how in his prime is he?
Yeah.
Like there's those questions.
This is why the Arnold Barboza fight's good though, because you talk about boxing skill. Barboza's going to come in and try to outbox Teofimo. Yeah. And Teofimo, funny enough, you know who he's working with right now. Now, obviously, he's done some stuff with Eddie Reynoso, but he is working with Logan Paul's former trainer. Logan's not training with him anymore.
No,
Milton is working with him a little bit right now. So I'm interested to see. I'm
putting money on Barboza, right?
He's doing some stuff with Milton Supreme, so I'm interested to see like the hands down.
God.
And we'll see.
He was a lovely guy, but and look, he did coach a genuine. I think he coached Shannon
world
Briggs,
champion, yeah.
But at the same time, right, coaching a heavyweight boxer and coaching this level, it's different types of technique. I always wanted Logan to leave him and to get a different coach, because I felt like Logan was such an athlete that maybe, with more fully committed, boxing style where you're putting your weight through your punches, whereas with Logan, it was always on the edge of range sort of thing and flicking the jab. I wonder how that's going to go. I really do. And I know he was pissed at Canelo's training. I was like, look, I'm working with Canelo. But you just wonder, was that the best move he could have made?
We'll see. I think Teofimo's got such good raw ability and also boxing IQ. This is the thing. I know that we throw that term out there. We throw it out there for Devin Haney. I'd argue Teofimo's is better. And
and look, it's very different to training Logan Paul from scratch, right? This is a well-oiled machine, and he should still, be able to perform at his best. It's just, it's an eyebrow raiser that.
But I like what you said about Devin Haney. Like Jose Ramirez coming off a loss to Arnold Barboza in this co-main event spot. Essentially, I mean, who's really the co-main? We know Ryan's the main, but Devin Haney's got a lot to prove here. And yeah, you talked about it with Bill Haney. There's so much pressure he puts on this guy. And for good reason, by the way. Let's not act like Devin Haney's not one of the best in the world, right? We're talking about an undisputed champion here at one point. So now in a new division, obviously in recess champion because of the whole Ryan Garcia fight, Ryan not making weight. But Devin Haney's got an opportunity here to put himself back in good standing with a lot of the fans that went bad on him after the lawsuit and after assault and battery charges or allegations and things in a fight, right, that you sign up for. But yes, we'll
he
freely
should lean into that now. Can we like, you're a WWE guy. He should be the heel now. Like, he should absolutely.
No, he should. I think he's trying to, but Devin doesn't seem like he's naturally as equipped to go out there and start cutting promos on people. He's not going to pull the Ryan Garcia with the beer in the hand and taking it to the top. It's not what he's doing, but I do think Bill, regardless if Devin wants to lean into it or not, he's pushing him into it. Did you see? He went after Todd Grisham. Like, he was like, it's crazy.
I talked about that because
it's crazy.
We've both worked with Todd, And Todd was just bringing up natural points about, how will Haney's chin be after, he's obviously
It was
been
not a
dropped yet.
personal attack from Todd, no.
But of course not. The guy's doing his job. And I actually think Todd Grisham, when it comes to... He did the face-off for the Tyson Fury-Alexander Usyk rematch. He did a spectacular job, one of the best I've seen. And he's when I'm commentating with him, when you're commentating,
He's a pro.
He's a pro. You're literally, he's like, you're a learner driver, and he's like, don't worry, bro, I got
this.
First. Yeah. Like and you just have to talk, right?
Yeah.
And he tells you when to talk, when not to talk. The guy is top class.
Yeah.
So for him to talk to him like that, when he conducts himself with such class, I just thought, you know what? You're a fucking prick, you. And every time Devin Haney gets smashed from now on, I'm going to laugh at you. And not even at Devin. That's really
the thing.
Anything. But it's him. I can't stand him.
Yeah. No, I think Devin gets a lot of the flack for Bill. Like, I genuinely, when you look at Devin, you feel bad. And you're like, oh, like I want to like Devin because he seems like he is down to earth. Like you said, a true professional, puts his heart and soul into boxing. But then you just ran into a buzzsaw with Ryan Garcia, and this is where we're going to, I wanted to get back to the main here and work our way back. I think Ryan Garcia right now, in the headspace he's in, obviously the chaos that surrounded the Devin fight, but now it looks like he's found that happy medium where he's not full crash out Ryan, but he's still talking his shit. He's still, I want this guy. And by the way, let's give credit to guys like Devin, Ryan. Really, Ryan gets the most credit here, but even Teofimo, these guys have made these lower weight classes the go-to watched fights because they're going out and chasing greatness. Not necessarily belts, but they're chasing greatness, and there's a big difference. You've got to give them
credit because Tank is not chasing greatness. Tank is sitting there in a comfort zone, and that comfort zone came up and embarrassed him recently.
It bit him.
And this is what can happen, right? Whereas Ryan, when you're seen to be reaching for the stars, even as much as we dislike some of the things Ryan said, as a fighter, you go, this man will fight any of this lot. Mm-hmm. And there's a respect that comes with that you can't get if you don't fight the best of the best. This is why I give a lot of credit to those like Anthony Joshua, who could have dropped the belt, not fought Usyk, took the fucking Usyk fight, So, and I think you're right. I think Ryan is the one who I look at and I go, oh, he's starting to look less like a crazy drunk alcoholic, and he actually is starting to behave a bit like an athlete here. And that is a dangerous, dangerous combination. If they can find that sweet spot where he's still having fun, but he's locked in enough, it's going to be great.
Make no mistake, Rolly Romero is not being talked about a lot in this fight, but he's a power puncher and a guy that even, Tank, who fought both of them, said Rolly hits harder. Like, this guy really can bring it. Skills pay the bills at this level, and I think that's why, in my opinion, Ryan's going to win this fight. But
yeah, I expect Rolly to look okay, but it's just Ryan is going to counter with that left, and it's going to be like a blink of an eye, and he'll be down.
Dude, I've talked to people. It's so crazy. I've talked to people in the LA scene. I've trained with some of the guys that have been at Tangoose, where Ryan, was for a very long time as an amateur. And I've asked him about it because for the life of me, I'm doing like equations to try to figure out why does the left hook work like that? I'm like on the heavy bag and I'm like trying to dislocate my shoulder and throw it. I don't get it. And I talked to a couple of guys that have sparred both him, Tank, and they're like, Tank has that thudding power, right? When he hits you, like it's like a brick. They call it the brick hand for a reason, right? But Ryan's like a whip and you don't see it. And when it touches you, you don't even know you've been hit sometimes. You end up on the ground and you're like, what happened? He's like, dude, it's like those punches that Ryan throws hurt so much worse because of the lack of just understanding where it's coming from. You don't see it. And before you know it, he's hit you with 2 or 3 of them. And he can throw it forward and back. It's dangerous, man.
The thing that he also answered at the Devin fight was, obviously, his gas tank was not great in that fight, and he still won convincingly, right? Yeah. He wasn't even that fit. You could see him taking breaks within the rounds constantly.
Sticking his tongue out.
When he got hit, there was like a, fucking come on then. And I was like, this pretty boy is not just like, he is actually mean up here as well. And that was the question mark, because the Luke Campbell fight helped with that because he got dropped in that fight, came through it. And obviously he lost the Tank fight, which I think Tank drained him down to the worst possible humanly imaginable.
I would love to see that rematch now.
It's not a true representation of Ryan at his best and Tank at his best. And I think we all know what Tank is at this point, the way he tries to manipulate things. But I think Ryan showed a lot in that fight despite the drug testing.
Bro, people, and we'll kind of leave off on this. If you think Ryan's a pretty boy because you've seen him with Gymshark or you've seen him with social media, or you've seen him, with all these different brands, go look up Victorville, California. Look where he's from. There's nothing. That man, again, say what you want, and trust me, I have, about his antics and some of the stuff he was getting into last year, but we talk about the pressure on guys like Devin Haney. Ryan Garcia had to take care of his family from like 15, and he brought everybody with him. And there's a lot that doesn't go said about Ryan that I do think at one point we'll find out more about, but he's the last thing from a pretty boy. He might have the Oscar De La Hoya look, but Oscar was called a pretty boy, and he was a dog too. Like, these guys are cut from the same cloth. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that one, but it doesn't stop there, because the next day, Geordie, we have Canelo Williams Skull. Canelo making his grand arrival, the grand debut with the ring after a massive, 4-fight deal. With implications, by the way, that we're going to get Canelo and Crawford. And I think this fight for Canelo to reestablish undisputed is kind of the idea here. That way we lead into Crawford challenging Canelo for undisputed. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I'm alone in saying when Canelo got the fight with William Skull, everybody went, "Who is William Skull?" I'm just kidding. Like, we have to be real. That's what everybody said.
Even guys who I looked at,
hardcore. I'm talking like in the weeds. They're like,
no idea.
And no offense. And by the way, we don't mean this as any offense to William Skull. Champion, rightfully so. It is
that's how boxing is, though. There's loads of hidden champions who, and this is obviously, what Turkey is looking to do away with, is all these random dudes who no one's ever.
By the way,
one champion.
Thank you. I've never. Everybody has their opinion on the 4-belt system. World champions need to be defined as one. Exactly. You are the champion of the world, not the champion of this commission, not the champion of this, purse bid. You are the champion of the world because you took on all tough fights. This is why, again, not to go, glaze Ryan anymore here, but this is what I love about what he said in a recent interview. He's like, listen, I want great fights. If the belts come, they come. But I want to go take on the toughest fighters. And that ultimately is what we look at as legacy. When I look back on Tyson, or I look on Lennox Lewis, or I look on even a Canelo Alvarez or a Floyd Mayweather, I look back at the fight. I don't look at, and yet some people will say, he's multiple divisions undisputed. That's awesome. Manny Pacquiao, 9-division world champion. Great. But I look at the fights, and then I look at the belts, because that's what matters to me. And I think that's what should matter in this sport. And I think that's what Turkey's doing well. But Canelo Williams Skull, thoughts?
Yeah, obviously, Skull, everyone's limited in their knowledge of him, and that kind of is a lose-lose for Canelo. That's the problem here, is he's coming into this fight with all the expectation on him. Mm-hmm. It's your first Riyadh season event, and people expect on the Riyadh season cards, you got to deliver, you got to bring out the big guns, right? And I'm expecting him to win. Yeah, but it's how he wins, in my opinion, as well, because this is you have to set expectations high, because Crawford, Canelo, it's going to be this huge boxing extravaganza, right? I feel like it's the WrestleMania of, boxing, that the way they're talking about putting it in Vegas and all of that, which would be the first Riyadh Vegas card. And
Allegiant Stadium too.
Bro, I love that stadium.
It's nice.
I heard they're going to model Newcastle Stadium on that the next time we build one. I was like, I'd have some of that. So I was excited about that big time, because the event, will be the biggest. And there's rumors that the first, Dana White involved boxing card would
Uncle
be
Dana coming in to help out.
Mate, it will be. It'll be WrestleMania. It'll be absolutely insane. But if Canelo does not do his fight in devastating and exciting fashion, considering Terence Crawford's last performance was one of his less exciting performances in recent years.
We were there.
It's not going to whet the appetite, So I think that it isn't just about Canelo winning the belt. It's about how he wins that belt, because you need to get the fans excited for that fight. Yeah.
I think that's a great point, because what we expect out of Canelo, fight by fight, has been a bit different over the last couple of years.
Massively,
right?
Yeah.
We've seen what he did to Kovalev. We've seen what he did to Billy Joe. We saw what he did to Caleb Plant. And I think maybe that Caleb Plant fight was the last fight you went, that was proper Canelo. Because then you had the Bivol fight. And while we went into that one, and fair play, a lot of people, myself included, went into that going, Canelo versus Bivol. He's doing this again. He's moving up. We want to see David Benavidez. And sure enough, we found out Bivol's that motherfucker. Like, we found out real quick, like, oh, hold on a second. And again,
that guy.
It could have just been a guy like me, the casual concept over here. But now we look at a Williams Skull fight. We're kind of doing the same thing with the idea that Canelo and Crawford, and by the way, Crawford, I don't know if it's the right decision to be hanging out and waiting on this Canelo fight.
And he always does this.
And he does it once a year, and I'm like,
mate, I dread to think of the classic Crawford performances we could have had, because all fighters look better the more they fight, all of them. And I don't know why he does this. I think it's been a massive detriment to his own career. I think he would have been a huge star if he'd have just fought. Like, people wouldn't be confusing him with Kendrick Lamar if he'd fought more often, right? Do you know? So it's partly his fault, right? And but you know what? We said it earlier about chasing greatness. He's chasing greatness in fighting Canelo. And he does have things that could, give Canelo some problems. And I am 1,000,000% locked in for that. That may be my most anticipated fight this year. But again, need Canelo to do his
side. Got to get the job done first, for sure. Got to get the job done. How about your boy Martin McCauley coming back on this card? That's listen, when we saw him fight in person and he looked like, granted, and fair play to Jared Anderson, he took some shots in that fight, but we thought, this is modern day George Foreman, bro. We were
George
convinced.
Foreman is alive and well.
Rest in peace, man.
Mate, we did our live show. I think you might have been doing a live show for the last one where you fought Joseph Parker.
Yeah.
And Lawrence Oswecki, 10-1 pro boxer on the Paying Game live show. He was not impressed. He was like, how on earth are you letting yourself come into this ring looking like a baby hippo right now? and he literally said, like, how much do you weigh, Brian? I was like, at the time, I was 300 pounds. I've lost a little bit of weight.
I was going to say, you're on that journey, baby. Let's go.
But he goes, I'm not even just saying this. Brian's footwork's better than Lawrence McCauley right now. Right now. I'm not even just saying. And I was laughing. And I was like, if you want your footwork, come to me, Turkey. But it was an embarrassing performance, and it's not even that he lost, right? Everyone can lose to Joseph Parker. He's one of the best fighters in the world.
Right now, by the way, especially on a friggin' tear.
This upper size, now he's moved up and bulked up a bit. He looks even more powerful, more deadly. But here's the problem. Martin McCauley is a professional athlete. This is your job. And he not long ago, he was 270 pounds. For you to come in weighing 320 plus pounds when you were already 270, you should never, if you're just training in the off season to a moderate degree, I'm not even talking about hard training.
310.
Right. So he
That's
when
crazy.
when you're already 265, 270, right, which is what he used to weigh.
Yep.
Right. For you to put on 40 fucking pounds, there's only one way you can do that. It's doing fuck all and eating everything. That is the only way to do that, because the bigger you are, the harder it is to eat too many calories, to actually eat more calories than you actually need. So he must have been eating everything. And,
okay.
and I eat a lot.
He did come in on 4 days. It was, it was a very short notice fight for him. Like, he got the call late.
No point in his.
I know. You shouldn't be at any point. I got you.
And someone afterwards said, well, he hadn't trained since August. I'm like, what are we talking about here? You're supposed to be challenging for a world title. Do you really think Anthony Joshua, even Tyson Fury, who's retired, we see him jogging, we see him training, right? Don't talk to me about I had 4 or 5 months off of just eating. And the reason I'm getting this frustrated is because I think Martin McCauley's natural ability is fan-fucking-tastic, mate. I think he's a fantastic fighter, and I think he could give a lot of people problems. And he's doing himself a disservice, and it's like, you're an African hero, but you could be a legend of all legends if you just applied yourself here.
He really could be.
He's letting himself down, mate.
He really could be a destroyer, man, because we saw it. It didn't take a lot of effort. When he puts a glove on you, you leave this world. Like, he's so dangerous. But to be fair play, Joseph Parker got a potential star there. The way he's going through guys right now and just running through the division. I want to see him and AJ
in boxing, by the way.
Give him whoever.
Pre-fighting them, because the thing with Joseph Parker is everyone he fights afterwards, everyone goes, nah, this shit. Anyway.
Oh, they're down.
So,
yeah.
Zhilei Zhang, one of the most terrified punchers in boxing. Deontay Wilder, the people called him the Grim Reaper. Then he fights McCauley. These are the 3 most feared fighters in the heavyweight division outside of the champions in the last 10 years. He knocked them down one by one as if they were nothing.
Yeah, man.
You know. So.
Also, justice for Parker too, because I guess we're just not getting the Dubois fight now. I guess it's just
I don't know what's happening, mate.
Justice for him. We got. I don't know what the sickness was. And again, we're not here to rag on Danny Dubois. I love him, but that should have been the fight. I still think it should be. But I'll take Parker and AJ. You know what I'm saying? A little rematch. I'll take that.
Yeah, or Caballel maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, either one are fine for me. But speaking of this card and Canelo headlining, right. The first thing you think of when you look at recent Canelo history is the Bivol fight. And yesterday we got some news potentially coming out from Bivol's camp as he is essentially informed the WBC that he will not be continuing to hold their belt. He's vacating, which I think a lot of people take to mean that he won't be fighting David Benavidez, which is a bummer because David Benavidez, for the life of him, cannot seem to get a massive fight with Canelo. Can't get a fight with Bivol. I mean, by the way, the Morrell fight, probably still, in my opinion, fight of the year, even this early. But it means that we're going to get, looks like, Bivol and Beterbiev, the trilogy. What do you think?
I feel like there's some boxing politics going on in the background about that because I think Turkey was definitely interested in having that Benavidez fight. You had him front row, I think, or you offered him to come.
Yep.
And is it PBS who
yeah, PBC and PBC. that it looks like that's the barrier. PBC in Turkey right now kind of having to work out how they're going to do business because you see it also a PBC is Tank, right? And those guys are wanting to stay there.
They don't look after, they don't do things in the way that the spirit of boxing, in my opinion, it's just looking after their own guys. And that's up to Benavidez to leave there if he wants to get that fight, in my opinion, in the long term.
And by the way, the fight can still happen. Right, it's not like
in future, definitely. Yeah. Bivol versus Beterbiev. Every fight they have is magic. It's a classic.
People were. I want you to give your thoughts on this. People said the second fight, meh. I don't believe that. I think the second fight was cool. I think it was a great fight. I thought Bivol made adjustments, but a lot of people are going, yeah, the second fight, meh. Do we really need the trilogy?
It's hard to say this because it sounds like you're taking away from the win or the credibility of that Bivol achieved in making those adjustments. But I honestly looked at Beterbiev and I thought, you haven't got the same energy as you had in that first fight. Yeah. In the first fight, he stepped on the gas and he stepped on the gas and he piled the pressure on and he made that fight his own by the end of that fight. And I think it was rightful that he won. He didn't have the same energy. The juice just wasn't there in this fight, and it was easier for Bivol to execute his game plan and get away from him and pick him apart.
Artur Beterbiev, at some point, we have to recognize he's 40.
I think I recognized it, right, in that fight, mate. And it's a weird one because every time someone steps foot in a ring with Artur Beterbiev, you could go to sleep, right? But I think that the odds will be continuously now in the favor of Bivol because he's 7 years younger. Yeah. I think it's going to be a hard fight to Beterbiev to make those adjustments. And I think if I'm him, I think he needs to go for broke earlier and he needs to, really start landing those heavier shots earlier while there's energy in the tank. Because in that first fight, he was like, all right, I've got the gas tank, I've got the power. I will find a way here. He now knows that gas tank isn't what it used to be. And we see this in fighters, right? I remember people like Chael Sonnen in the UFC, it just depleted out of nowhere. And it happens around this age. So he needs to change strategy based on what he can now do. Now he knows. Yeah.
I think early on, and in that first fight, you did see that. You saw him stepping on Bivol's toes early on. You saw it a little bit in the second fight. I think if you're doing this trilogy, the idea has to be we have to get him out of there. Because the longer this fight goes, he's going to start picking from the outside. He's going to be able to change angles. He circles so well. He gets in, gets his stuff off, and then leaves.
But you have to risk your own safety in that point. And that's why people don't. That's why Tyson Fury never did it with Usyk, even though he claimed he was going to bulldoze him and all of that. It's you have to understand. You have to go for broke at some point in the first 6 rounds, roughly, when you've got the energy to actually get him out of there if you do hurt him. And if you don't, you're getting knocked out. Yeah. Accept it. It's probably Beterbiev's last ever fight. Just go for it. You know what I mean?
And by the way, I know that people are going to say, everybody's ducking David Benavidez. And normally I'd agree with you. I just don't see in this case how you duck. Like, oh, yeah, you ducked David Benavidez to fight Artur Beterbiev. It's like In this case, that's not how I see it. Now, granted, boxing.
Does anyone really think Bivol or Better Beer would avoid anyone?
Yeah, at this point
in the world.
Although I will say and we're going to transition to this in a second. My favorite fighter right now on the planet is El Monstro, David Benavidez. Love watching him fight. We'll talk about why more in a second. But yeah, this fight, I'm with it. The trilogy, I felt as the second fight ended. I know a lot of people were, do we really need to see it? I thought we did. How many times do we get historic trilogies in boxing, at least in the modern era? I want to see it.
I agree. I absolutely agree, because as much as Better Beer is getting older,
was not a runaway fight.
This is boxing history, mate.
Yeah.
It felt like a moment when, especially that first fight for me, when they were going at it.
When they got in the ring and you're like, oh my God, we're actually getting an all-time, like, best versus best fight. This is what we asked for in boxing.
And it felt special to us. Like, we were, like, you know what annoyed me growing up is, like, I would rewatch all of those old Eubank versus Benn fights, and it was like, we ain't got this anymore. That was a Eubank Benn fight type. Like it was special. It's something that will live forever. That we can always go back and watch time and time again and go, just have a beer. What a classic fight! I could watch this any time in my life. That's something that doesn't come along often, and I think that's why we need to get because otherwise there's always the argument of there was 1-1, and let's end it. You know what I mean?
Let's finally put the nail in the coffin there, but. Speaking of putting the nail in the coffin, we're going to transition a little bit here before we get into some rapid fire stuff at the end. We talked a lot of boxing today. We have purposely not talked a lot of the crossover scene, but it may be nail in the coffin time for crossover boxing, and I don't mean that in any sort of like laughing, pointing down way. But
do you know what? The writing's on the wall, right? For a couple of reasons, right? Jake Paul had an unbelievable moment on Netflix where I personally hated the fight, but I appreciated the business that it did. And but let's not kid ourselves. Mike Tyson was hugely important to that moment.
For sure.
And the driving factor was people wondering if old man Mike Tyson, the most famous boxer living in the world, can knock out this young kid who, some people kind of knew, some people really knew. Jake Paul's fame does not compare to Mike Tyson's fame at all.
No.
But he definitely helped it. I'm not taking anything away from him. But let's not kid ourselves. Prior to that, he fought Mike Perry. That bombed on pay-per-view. He fought a couple of guys in hotels or whatever. No one cared about that. And now the pressure is on Jake Paul to be relevant again. The problem is Jake Paul is not the level of these world-class boxers. He can't just go in there and fight a Better Beer or someone like that. He needs competitive fights. It looks like Tommy Fury's next. Now, the issue with that is if Tommy beats him again, everyone's like, well, there you go. You fought, a decent pro who's, looked down upon by the majority of boxing, professional boxing fans. And you've been found out, all right, you beat an old man here and an old man there. They discredit what he's done. I'm not saying that. I think, considering he was a fucking YouTuber and he went and beat Anderson Silva,
it's crazy.
He's done fantastically well.
It's crazy.
But there's only so many notches on the ladder you can climb before it gets too hard. And I think Tommy Fury is going to be one that he needs to win to continue this journey. Otherwise, there's only one guy left, and that's the influencer boxing's guy, KSI. And he right now looks like he doesn't give a fuck about boxing.
Yeah.
So I think the both of them, I'm like, how long does this go on for? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. For Jake, there's a certain amount of you need to get these fights done mentality. I think Tommy is right there, number one on the list, and I think that's the one that everybody wants to see. They're going to announce this week at some point, so we'll see what happens there. But, man, yeah, it does feel like a changing of the guard. It honestly, to me, feels like KSI is about to retire, and you were there when he started, so I kind of wanted to get your thoughts. He hasn't announced this officially, but if you're reading between the lines on this thing and you're looking at him and the way he's talking about fighting, and then you're looking at the way his team is talking about the way he approaches fighting, and it's just there's a lot of disconnect there from rumored, I should say, KSI's team maybe not putting him in tough fights because they don't see him taking the sport as seriously as he needs to put him in tough fights. KSI wanting big names, wanting tough fights, but having a lot of stuff that he's doing outside of boxing. And then you have the issues that come along with doing so many things outside of boxing and still trying to train. Fights get canceled, you get hurt, you get sick. This thing looks like a snowball rolling downhill. And like I said, you were there from the beginning, so kind of want your thoughts on this.
Well, it's good that you mentioned the beginning, because at the beginning there was an aggression, there was an anger, there was an angry young man who really wanted to prove a fucking point. Like, I am not what you think I am, and I think he proved that when he beat Logan. And I'm not sure I've seen the same level of fire since then. I think maybe we've seen a bit of it against Tommy Fury because he knew he was really up against a proper boxer.
Challenge,
fight.
right?
Yeah. And he brought out the dog in that fight, got to give him credit, and he definitely made it really difficult for Tommy, and I think he held his own to some degree, like to a good degree in there.
For sure.
I think you could argue he won that fight if Tommy had been deducted that point.
I had it to draw.
Yeah, I had it at least a draw, to be honest with you. But the point is when he's talking about boxing compared to the way he used to talk about boxing, it's like, it's the energy is like flat, and obviously he's pulled out of 2 fights now, which, one was illness, one was an injury. But then he said, I'm going to reschedule, the Dylan Dennis fight. And now that's off. And,
that's not happening, dog. It ain't happening.
But no explanation. I don't know what's going on there. Do you know what I mean? And it's strange because a lot of his fans would have paid the travel, booked the hotels, and then to just go, it's being rescheduled, and then all of a sudden, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, obviously we don't know why. Maybe there's a genuine reason. Obviously, I would assume there would be. But it just doesn't feel like that desperation is there. And like, I know Dylan Dennis is hardly like his end goal, but if you want to fight a Jake Paul down the road, Jake Paul, the reason Jake Paul has elevated himself is because he stayed active and he's kept fighting and he's kept fighting. You really can't just roll out of bed and fight a Jake Paul. You need to be in there. You need to be getting roughed up a bit. You need to be, fighting for your life in spots. And even then, Dylan Dennis is certainly not a warm-up fight for a Jake Paul. You need probably another person in between that. So if you don't want to do the hard work to get the win, then the win is not going to come, and you should just probably fuck it off, to be honest with you. Which would be a real shame because he's built Misfits up. And I look at Misfits and the potential it has and the future potential it has, especially with how many influencers want to be a part of the scene and how many fun moments we've seen from the likes of Assault Pappy or my guy Joey Knight, for example. These budding boxers come out of nowhere. And, I get there's been mentions before about, the problem is KSI has to carry the show too much. And really, it's like, well, yeah, but he owns the company. It's not like, he is a boxer who is promoted by them. He owns the company as well. He's going to get, in the back end, when they eventually sell it or whatever, probably a good fucking reward for all of it.
For sure. Absolutely.
So there's a lot of reward in that for him. And it's not like he's managing the fighters day to day. And I think that he may, if he does hang up the gloves at his age in his early 30s, he might regret it because it is just, you can do content forever, but you can't fight forever. And you've got a chance here to make some really amazing moments. And personally, I've seen more than enough from his coaching team now to say, I just wish he was with someone else. I don't think that has been the best place for him for loads of reasons. From the way he's fighting, from the fact that they continue to let him train when he was ill, as you rightly pointed out on Twitter. That was
crazy.
Crazy idea that a coach should step in at that point. From, the interviews where they say we're ready for the top guys, and then behind the scenes, obviously, when we're putting all these fighters forward on the Misfit Small Council, it's all of them getting rejected, and they're deliberately trying to get the weakest possible opponent for him. There's millions of reasons I could give. I think if KSI had been at a boxing gym that were, there's many of them around the UK who could have taken him up levels. I don't think his boxing skill has gone up in the way that in the time period he's had to work on it could have done. And I think this jumping jack style, while it can work for him in sports, the basics should have been worked on a hell of a lot more. And it's giving the idea that maybe they don't want him getting exposed because that's them getting exposed, that we haven't really done the homework that we should have been doing with all this time we have. I think KSI should, if he does want to fight, I think he should be getting different coaching personally. And this is no disrespect to them personally. They're probably lovely guys or whatever, but it's just my opinion.
Yeah, man, it didn't seem like you had a lot of thoughts there. I didn't know if I could get enough out of you.
I mean, you asked me for
I know.
I'll deliver for you. Bro.
Listen, here's the thing, too. I know that it's coming closer to the end, and the reason I know this, I'll just tell you now. I got asked about fighting Dylan Dennis, so I can tell, like, and no offense, like,
But
I got it.
Why is that? Because people are lining up fights like a Dylan Dennis fight, and then like last second, it's off.
That's what I was gonna say. I get it. Shout out to Mams Taylor. He really tried his best to make everything happen. But when these kind of things start to be like you're just throwing stuff at the wall, I'm not saying that I've seen it before.
Mams has his hands tied behind his back part of the time because Mams wants to make the bigger fights, but these coaches, they've been a problem in the past many times, and Mams ironically gets the blame, and behind the scenes, he's the one speaking.
He's the one that's trying to put it all out there. My respect for him has grown so much over this last year, knowing what he's got to deal with and all that. But Wade versus Dylan Dennis, how's it go? What are you saying?
I think you win that.
Let's go.
Yeah. To be honest, again, I think obviously you and KSI have had little back and forths in the past. And I think that is a fight where the fans would love it. And obviously, you're just starting out and he's been doing this for a while, and you may want to get a couple of more under your belt. God willing that this Misfits promotion carries on going, hopefully.
Well, hold on. What's the number? You know what I'm saying?
I think you're getting paid a lot because it's storylines, and this is what influencer boxing was built on. It's disagreements being settled in a ring. I would love to see that fight, and it would be a great matchup. But again, if his heart isn't in it and he doesn't want to do it, I completely respect that.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it.
Just fuck it off, bro. And do the guy's doing amazing things elsewhere. Yeah. Fair play, but equally, I think there's a lot on the table at Misfits, and there's so much he could. He's not there yet, but Misfits could be able to fly without him. But again, in the UFC, it took a decade of the likes of Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, Rampage Jackson. They had character after character after character coming through. It wasn't built in a day. And when people are like, God, still reliant on KSI, I'm like, it's a baby. This thing is a baby, man. You got
2.5 years.
You got to give it time. It's not going to just happen overnight. And I think that's people who haven't been watching fighting as long as me coming out with stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
we'll hope for the best, obviously, for crossover boxing, for KSI, for Misfits, for all that. But before I get you out of here, Jordan, I want to do not necessarily rapid fire, but I want to ask you some things that I think are we talk about fighting all the time, but sometimes I don't even know about you. And every time I want to bring someone on this Wade Concept Conversations, and now presented by The Ring, we're going to have all these different guests. I want to start asking these questions. So, who is right now True Geordie's favorite fighter, and who is your all-time favorite fighter, and why? I'll start while you think. Right now, and we talked about it a second ago, I think the best boxer, or my favorite and the best boxer walking the planet, I'm going to be honest, is David Benavidez. I genuinely think that. And I think it because, number one, his size is such a massive thing to deal with. At 168, now to 175. The Vucinic fight that he won, no one seems to give him credit for. By the way, Vucinic, 3 years off. Go look at who he fought before he took the break. That was a prime Artur Beterbiev that he stood in there with. And outside of that, who's he losing to? You know what I mean? And David Benavidez comes up there and takes him to school. No, he didn't stop him. But I was there that night. I watched David Benavidez put the beats on him. You know what I mean? Like, that was crazy. Dr. Dre style. You know what I mean? So, outside of the 168 stuff, I watched him inside game work Caleb Plant in a way that Canelo couldn't. Let's go back to the Caleb Plant-Canelo fight. And Caleb Plant's, winning some of those early rounds and doing it in the inside.
He did all right there. He did all right.
David Benavidez, sure, he gave up some rounds early, but in the inside game started piecing Caleb Plant up. I think... And then I hear the stories. And again, I'm talking to boxers that have been in the BJ sparred David Benavidez when he was like 17. And he was like, oh my God, who is this? He's like, BJ was like, it's time to retire because that's what's coming down the line. And by the way, Morrell is going to be a motherfucker for years in that at 175. And Benavidez just beat him. You want to tell me Morrell's not a world champion in a couple of years? You're crazy. That fight's going to have a rematch and a trilogy, I think, down the line. I think right now, yes, Terrence Crawford, pound for pound, I get that. Canelo, lineage, and he's still at the top level, I get that. Bivol probably is the best argument you can give me for, or Usyk, to be fair, for somewhat still in their prime and operating at a level that we have never seen. But David Benavidez is 28 years old.
You brought up Usyk.
Yeah.
I've got to say, right, if you said to me who was the best boxer in the world, I would go Alexander Usyk, because I don't think people understand
Resume's crazy.
The size discrepancy that he is at against the Tyson Fury, and the way he bullied him in back-to-back fights, in not letting, as much as Fury had the odd good round, he made damn sure he was all over him. And, even in that second fight where Fury says, I'm going to come back, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, he didn't do shit, man. He knew, I'm in here with a better boxer. I can't live with him. And he wasn't willing to risk it because he knew he'd get knocked the fuck out. That last fight scared the shit out of him. He was like, I don't want to be fucking getting chinned all over the ropes like DVD logo again. And I think the fact
Rey Mysterio with it.
Mate, the Usyk has given boxing lessons to too many fighters for me to not put him at number one. And for me, one of the best performances I ever witnessed was Alexander Usyk versus Anthony Joshua 1. That was I just remember AJ chasing fucking shadows, mate. This is one of the quickest in the heavyweight division, the fast twitch fibers of AJ, and yet it didn't matter. But my favorite fighter to watch,
it's different. Best versus favorite, it's different.
Fabio Wardley.
Really? Okay.
Bad motherfucker.
Yeah.
Doesn't give a shit. Every fight, he's walking straight ahead, loading up, bombs. Right?
Just
he
bombs.
takes shots back. He doesn't give a fuck, this kid. And his nose is hanging off. Come on, then, right? Against Clark in the first fight with them. Clark is technically quite a good. He fought for a long, long time on Team GB amateur level. He's very well schooled. But Fabio Wardley's a fucking white collar guy like you. He started where you started, mate. And here he is at he's fighting Big Baby Miller soon, man. It's going to be crazy. So I think that Fabio Wardley has the eye of the tiger, has the determination, has power. And what I like about him is he isn't the most perfect boxer in the world. He's a hard motherfucker, though. And he has that war mentality. And I think whenever you get a guy like that, whenever you put that money down to watch him fight, you're getting your money's worth. And when he rematched Clark, a lot of people were like, Clark's boxing technique is going to take over. He rearranged Clark's face. Right? He made him look like a Picasso painting, right? That's how bad it was. It was fucking... So
I knew you were going to go heavyweight.
Mate, of course.
You can't resist. I knew it.
I respect them. I'm carrying fucking... I've been on a diet, right? I went from 300... I'm now 265.
Let's go, son.
So I can make heavyweight in the UFC.
Heavyweight Geordie coming soon. Okay.
Fucking right.
Favorite right now, obviously. Favorite historically. And just a quick why. For me, I'll give you mine why you think here. Favorite historically, my dad, as you know, a hard man in his own right. Obviously, big Mike Tyson fan, but also big Tommy Hearns fan.
Absolutely.
When my dad sat me down and we watched just periodically boxing when I was a kid, he watched Tommy Hearns, but I watched another guy. I watched Marvin Hagler. And Marvin Hagler for me is probably my favorite fighter ever. And it's not just because of the stance switching. It's not just because he really had no weaknesses. It's not just because he took punches and gave. Like, he had everything. He was defensively sound, but he could scrap you. He would fight you out of both stances, forward and back. He was 15 rounds of pure conditioning. He was a professional's professional, and he was robbed a lot. And he was kept a lot from being that number one fighter in the world from guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, who, fair play, he played the game for a long time and didn't let Marvin get to him until it was time. How about walking into the ring, acting like you're gonna finally fight Marvin Hagler and telling him to his face you retire just to come back later and fight him? I think Marvin Hagler is one of the greatest of all time.
62 and 3.
Like, what are we talking about, dude?
Crazy.
40 I think 39 or 40 fights before he had his first world title.
Yeah, crazy. And when he retired, he went. He was a recluse. Just the
man. Didn't give a fighter's fighter. Born again,
Yeah.
training in the Northeast. You hear the story that Joe Rogan tells. Growing up in the Northeast, and you hear the stories about Marvin Hagler running on the sand dunes, talking about war. That stuff right there, man. That gets me going. But yeah, all time, it's Marvin Hagler for me.
Yeah. I'd like to give two answers for different reasons.
Yeah, go for it.
when I always knew about Muhammad Ali, and everyone talks about him. Obviously, you're growing up, and he was in my school. There was stuff about him in school.
Yeah.
Like, we were taught about him in school.
He's a historical figure at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't even like a boxing figure. He was talked about as an historical figure in sport. And I remember I had this big book that we'd read, and I'd be like looking at Pele, and then there'd be Muhammad Ali, and so it was ingrained in me from young. But when I interviewed his grandson, I really went back and did my research, and I really looked into who the man was, and it left a profound impression on me as a person of like, yeah, when they say you're the greatest, it ain't just about boxing. It's about everything that he brought to the table. And the fact that, they did what they did to him, and he still came back out of his prime and still gritted his fucking teeth and showed, even though he was the Louisville lip and he was on the fucking tips of his toes and picking up fighters, he then just sat down on his punches and started like, I'm just going to fucking dog walk you even if I haven't got the same power as you or whatever. And there's that one clip of him before he's about to go out and fight. I think it's George Foreman. And he turns around to his team and he's like, you worried?
Yeah, what are y'all scared of? Yeah.
And he goes, if I look like you lot out there, I'd go and get my ass kicked. I'm going to go and take you know what I mean? And I was just like, you are a magical man.
And that performance, by the way,
and
paid the ultimate price, but what courage to have that in his mind to go and do that.
Mate, how you're dealing with special is when, a lot of people have this aura around Mike Tyson. Obviously, they're in awe of him when they're in his presence. When he talks about Muhammad Ali and he starts crying and he's going, and it's like, he goes, Ali's a giant. I'm nothing. He's willing to die for this. I'm nothing. And you really realize what he's saying is like, Ali was willing to sacrifice beyond where I was willing to go mentally. It ain't about skill. He knows Ali was superior to me up here. And that is there's just a massive appreciation for Ali for many, many, many fights, many reasons. In terms of when I was a kid, though, when my first that's a boxer. Oh, wow. Like, this is amazing. Prince Nassim Hamed.
Yeah, okay. Prince Nassim, man. Come on.
It was W.A.D.E showmanship with the best boxing skills you've ever seen, And it
so
wasn't
unique.
even like...
So unique.
Yeah, when he fought in New York, and you see the back and forth he had in that fight, where he comes down the runway to the Men in Black soundtrack, right?
And
he makes everyone wait for about half an hour before he gets to the ring, and he's dancing the whole time, or he's coming down on a flying carpet. I was a kid. I was like, whoa! I can't not watch this guy.
Yeah.
And he's so confident. He's so arrogant, and he's so fucking skillful, and he was fast, and he was like a light fighter. I can't remember, like 120 odd at the time when I was watching him, but he would hit so fucking hard, and he would jump into his punches. Like, I've never seen anyone fight like that in technical ability, and he hit way harder than he should have done. And it was funny because I always followed him, and I'd made the sort of switch a little bit to MMA back in the UFC days. But I'd still listen to like the early podcasts that were out, and someone was interviewing Prince Nassim Hamed, and he's obviously put a lot of weight on. He's older now, he's chilling, and good for him, he deserves it. But they were like, is there anyone that you sort of look at as a future Nassim Hamed? And he goes, there is this one guy. It's called Conor McGregor. And this was way before Conor McGregor had done... He maybe had a couple of fights in the UFC, maybe 2 or 3. He'd not fought for a title or anything. And I remember thinking, you're fucking onto something there, because he is very similar in many ways to the way Nas was. But Nas, as great a showman as McGregor was, and even if I've said things about him I don't like, Nas was better. Nas was better skillful-wise. Nas was better showman-wise. He was the pinnacle of entertainment in boxing I've ever seen. So credit to Prince Nassim.
Hell yeah, man. I wanted to also mention, yes, George Foreman, my favorite heavyweight ever. But
oh, God bless, yeah
2 careers, like unbelievable person, just an ambassador for the sport. Goes and destroys guys from a young age, and then just is this mean, just spiteful. I looked up to Sonny Liston. I wanted to destroy guys like Sonny Liston, and then obviously, the Ali fight has such an effect on him that he ends up retiring. Goes and does minister work, comes back because he gives all of his money. Think about how generous of a person you got to be, giving your money to people to bring them to God, to worship. and then you're like, well, I don't have any money, so I got to do the
got
one
paid
thing.
back, though. God paid him back.
I got paid him back with the grills, baby.
Good man. I tell you what, there's a lot to be said for charity after listening to that one.
Absolutely.
This man finished, outside of Mayweather, the richest boxer of all time, probably. Yeah. I seen pictures after he passed of his home and his garage and all. Mate, the guy, and good for him, because my God, did he deserve it. I mean, you seen him as an old man fighting Evander Holyfield. He was a young buck at the time. It was crazy what he did.
Came back at 45, wins the belt, and the story about him winning the belt from Teddy Atlas is just one of the most all-time stories. He's wearing the same trunks he wore in Zaire, and he comes out and he gets it done over Michael Moore, who at the time was a nasty southpaw.
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing they couldn't do was stand in front of George, and he tells Jim Lampley at one point, he's going to stand there in front of me, and I'm going to hurt him. I'm going to put him away. At some point, he will stand in front of me, and I'm going to win, and that's the final call. So it was amazing.
And he was a gentleman, wasn't he? Yeah.
It couldn't have happened to a better guy. But, yeah, man, I think that's it, brother. That's it for today. The first episode back of the W.A.D.E Concept Conversations. Man, I can't thank you enough, dog. Like, this means so much to me. I wanted to start on the right foot. I'm super nervous about this. You know me. I don't get nervous a lot, but this is a big deal for me, so I appreciate you coming on, man.
Well, we're all proud of you, man. I mean, I'm just a fan of the channel as much as anything, and I'm looking forward to seeing everything you do with the ring. Big shout out to them for doing the right thing, getting my guy on their platform, and mate, it's gonna be big things. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, brother. Well, there he is, folks. True Geordie. That is episode 1 of the W.A.D.E Concept Conversations presented by The Ring. What happens next in the world of boxing, in the world of combat sports? We don't have those answers, but guess we'll find out.